discussion on strengthening present capacity and infrastructure to visualize the future, build today to see tomorrow. Our moderator, Mr. Bhushan, Chief Business Officer at Flipkart.
Hello. Hi. Good evening, everyone. May I request Mr. Venkateswara, Chief Logistics Officer, Jindal Stainless Group, to come on stage, please. Mr. Rao. May I request Mr. Ajay Singh, Vice President Supply Chain, Hindustan Platinum, to come on stage, please. May I request Mr. Vipul Aggarwal, Executive Vice President Supply Chain, Polycab, to come on stage. May I request Ms. Seema Mohanty, Global Supplier Management, Fungicides, Bayer, CropScience, to come on stage.
Mid-range, drop the bass.
I request Mr. Krishna Singh, Senior Director of Logistics and Demand Supply of BSH Home Appliances Group, to come on stage. I request Mr. Anurag, Verma, Head of Demand Planning, Pidilite Industries Limited, to come on stage. Thank you everyone for joining in. I hope we are able to add lots of value to your time today. Thank you panel members for taking time out and come out for such an important discussion. And thank you Gain Scales media team to organize a conference on such an important topic, which is future of supply chain, essentially. But before we go to the future, let us just look back at the past, right? Okay. How has the definitions changed, right? From transportation, it has become logistics. From go down, it has become warehousing, right? From, I would say, material management, it has become supply chain management. But all this, while this was happening, the last decade was a game changer, right? The retail has changed completely with the advent of e-commerce. And the supply chain function, which was a back-end function, has become very much a front-end function right now. Customer expectations, which was 5 to 7 day delivery timelines, has come down to next day, same day, and in some cases even 30 minutes delivery. While this is all happening and the retail is changing, the supply chain is changing, I would, let's go back to our panel members. I have not noted some questions for them. I'll request Mr. Rao to come on first. Mr. Rao, what do you think are the current challenges and limitations in supply chain management infrastructure that need to be addressed to visualize the future?
Yeah, thank you, sir. Thank you, Maniji. As Mr. Mani had rightly mentioned about supply chain, the expectations of the customers, the end users are increasing day by day. And with COVID, the relevance of supply chain and supply chain professionals had increased a lot. We at Jindal Stainless, we are the top 10 stainless steel producers in the world. We are feeling the heat day in, day out. See, so-called whatever you were having old strategies or old functioning is no more relevant now. As he rightly said, same-day deliveries. We do expect from the customers, it's not same day, but at least whatever you have the timelines, you need to stick to it. But to stick to it and give the customers a wow experience, everything is not in our hands. The major thing from the metals and mining industry is, what we face is the availability of trucks, which is a big issue. Entire development in metals and mining is happening in the east coast, in the eastern part of the country, where everything is a challenge. Let me say you, I have 2 decades of experience working in the east coast. Really, it is very difficult. If we go for our business requirements to west coast, that is Gujarat, Maharashtra, everything is far, far developed. Whereas in east coast, the business acumen itself is not there in the, with the people. So availability of trucks is a big challenge for us. We are expanding here at Jajpur from 1 million to 4 million. Day in, day out, we suffer for the trucks, for moving our finished goods. And not only trucks, even mineral industry, either you take aluminium, you take steel, stainless steel, or whatever commodities, it's all raw material intensive industry. We require 25 tons of different raw materials to make 1 ton of aluminium. We require around 8 tons of raw materials to make 1 ton of stainless steel. So moving these huge raw materials, we cannot depend only on trucks. Rakes. Then rakes means Indian Railways. You have seen the business by what to say, Indian Railways is increasing their freight traffic by a mere 4 to 5%. But the industry is growing at a fast pace of 15 to 20%. That bridging of 10 to 15%, where the industry's expectation, the rakes, Indian Railways are not able to give us. When the rakes are not there, your voluminous movements you cannot do. Your huge raw material movements cannot come to the plant. If I don't give the raw materials to the plant on time, then your entire finished goods will not be produced. Those are all the main challenges I feel, sir, in the logistics, in the supply chain as of now.
Thank you, Mr. Rao. Quite insightful. Mr. Anurag, next over to you now. How can organization assess their existing supply chain infrastructure to identify areas for improvement and enhancement?
First of all, thanks Mani and Gain Skills Media to have me on the forum over here. Like Mani said, the customer expectations are changing in supply chain day by day. So we are expected to be faster. There is quick commerce coming up. We are expected to be more accurate in terms of planning, in terms of forecasting, in terms of knowing where we are exactly located, where our vehicles are located in terms of update to the customers. We are expected to be more efficient. And like Mr. Rao said, COVID-19 has been a game changer. It has been an eye-opener for us. So for an organization, first, they have to assess where they are in terms of capability currently in terms of their supply chain. So, and where they want to be. So we have heard of terms like Industry 4.0, Industry 3.0. So basically, any organization, if they want to assess, they can assess themselves on the parameters of, in terms of data or analytics, infrastructure, people or process-wise. At a strategic level, whether it is network or let's say it is about, where we are putting up the manufacturing units and plants. Those are some strategic decisions. And what is the capability they are currently having and where they want to be. Similarly, in terms of planning level, whether they want to have an SNOP process, they want to move towards an integrated business planning process, what type of inventory model they want to follow. So again, an assessment of the maturity level that they are currently at requires that. And in terms of physical flow of goods, in terms where I'm talking about the infrastructure or the logistics and the performance management and the order serving time to customers. So these are some of the parameters where an organization needs to actually reflect itself. And basis that, what is the aim they are trying to achieve basis their supply chain. So it may, a small organization, like I said, would not require all these complexities. But a big organization probably, they would want more accuracy in data, they need to be more agile. So the capability has to be built accordingly where they want to end up in terms of supply chain.
Thanks, Anurag. Over to you, Vipul. What role does digitization and automation play in strengthening the capacity and infrastructure of supply chain management?
Yeah, right. Thanks, Mani. So basically, I think one of the agenda of this meeting is around the future, how the future of supply chain will be. I think one of the things which we are seeing today, if we just see the environment around us, so we have customers who is demanding more and more, right, all the time in terms of the customer expectations. We have product which is, let's say, the whole SKU proliferation. We have more and more SKUs coming in, be it in any industry. So I'm talking more from FMCG, FMEG space. Thousands and thousands of SKUs you have to manage, and both from FG, spare parts, and whatnot. Then we have channel penetration. Earlier you were doing, let's say, the trade sales mostly. Now we are into omni-channel. E-commerce is actually history in a way because it's more than, let's say, a decade now. Now, increasingly, the brands want to reach directly to the consumer. So you will see a lot of brand shops coming in. So any companies want to do a B2B as well as a B2C, which brings a different kind of complexity to the supply chain. So let's say I was a part of Havells. So Havells want to have their own brand shop. So they can get more consumer insights directly. Whereas otherwise it's become very difficult to get the consumer insights. Or let's say the service team where they are doing the installation at the consumer place and want to get the feedback. So the whole point is, so one side you have a demand fluctuation with all these complexities around, and other side you have a supply disruptions. So fluctuation has gone up, disruptions also has gone up. So the complexity has become even bigger. So how do you take these two things together and keep on creating a right balance? And that's why we keep on hearing a lot about agile supply chain part. And that's where digitization and automation keeps into picture more and more. And why do we need that? As we all know, so today all of us uses, let's say, Google Maps, right? It is a basic digitization, the way we travel, right? And what does it give us? It gives us, let's say, a peace of mind in terms of accuracy of data, and you trust that data, trust that information. Same works with digitization. More and more transparency and visibility of data will keep on happening in supply chain. No more you want to call a person to get a feedback. You want to have all the information on your desk and want to use it as and when. So data has also become commoditized in a way. Same is the way I'll say for automation. So let's say if you have seen cars today, car is more electronics than mechanical today, right? So over a period of time, can we say the similar thing for our warehouses? It is not just about putting some racks or putting some material handling equipment. How it is going to become more and more electronics, more and more demand sensing, more and more inputs to the back end. So whether we are able to close the loop through the warehousing piece. And because that's the place where the whole execution is happening. And whether the execution is giving the feedback back to the planning. Let's say if I have few products which are stocked out, and now there is a new shipment which is going to come in. Whether I have artificial intelligence built into the system that I don't need to, let's say, stack this product back into the racks, rather keep it near to the dock, because I know this SKU is stocked out at my warehouse. I'm just giving a very small basic example. There are different things which you can think of with respect to digital and automation, and how the warehousing execution piece can help in delivering better numbers to the business. Actually, I'll say with respect to the talent, the people themselves don't know how much value they can add to the business. Let's say with respect to aging of inventory, with respect to damaged goods which are lying in the warehouses. If the loop is closed and the lot of information flows automatically through the system, huge potential or lot of efficiency can be brought in by the warehousing and logistics. So this is one of the area which I see lot of work will happen. As we see, margins are getting compressed day by day. So lot of work will happen on all these initiatives in terms of better inventory management, not just with respect to planning, but also with respect to how we are keeping the goods within the warehouse. At the same point in time, I'll say increased focus will happen on compliance, with GST compliance being in, or the environmental compliance, or other regulatory compliances. So whatever infrastructure we are building around, or let's say the manpower, labor compliances, we have to take that into consideration and build the ecosystem and infrastructure which is future ready with respect to that. And not just the physical infra as well as the digital infra, the IT infra, which takes care of the whole ecosystem with respect to that. So these are the few of the things which I think people will work around. I think sustainability becomes another one. So while you design the whole infrastructure, whether it is sustainable enough in terms of our green this thing. Same time, I'll say a lot of plug and play will also work in. I think it is not just about each company having their own warehouses. Lot of flexibility is required today in terms of managing the demand. And companies want to experiment. And once you are experimenting, lot of failures will also happen. So once lot of failures will happen, so how do you plan the back end that it doesn't cost you beyond a point, right? It will cost you, but how do you keep that risk level right is when you do collaborate with the other partners in the system. So this is some of the stuff I think people will keep on working towards going forward.
Yeah. Thanks, Vipul. Some of the things really resonates with me as well. So when we in Ekart started thinking of opening our supply chain for brands, retailers across the ecosystem, end-to-end supply chain solution, and was analyzing the market, and I'm just for the audience here, India is the only major economy in the world, right? Okay, where we lose 40% of the value in the entire supply chain, right? And it's a huge number. Most of the economies would be around 10%, and most of the value lost is because of pilferages, damages, dead inventory lying, nothing selling, etc. Right? Okay, so, and we thought that if we have to remove this, we have to completely get away with the handshake issues in between. We have to be an end-to-end player rather than an individual 3PL player at different legs. And it added lots of value to the brands which we are working with, and they've started seeing benefits. But one of the problems still remains unsolved, right? Okay, how to make a secure supply chain, right? Okay, it's a supply chain has to be very, very secure. It can add tremendous value to the businesses. So with this thought, Seema, I come to you, right? What is the role of strategic securing in enhancing capacity and relationship with suppliers?
So thank you for this question, and I think I'm the unique one in this group who is from the strategic sourcing group and not really from planning and logistics. So I will focus my response on that. So I always say that this is really an interesting, a very interesting time to be in supply chain and of course in procurement and sourcing during this this time, this current scenarios, the current situations. So for two reasons. One is, of course, how the global situation is, how the current dynamics are, and everything there is so much of change and disturbance and disruption that you just don't have a playbook to go back to. You have to evolve, you have to figure out solutions each day. So that is really an interesting point to be in. And the other important and interesting part is the procurement functions within organizations. They are also evolving. And within the last few years, there has been a lot of traction in how this function has evolved in organizations. So it is being perceived as a very value-adding strategic partner of business functions and not just a cost center. So it is really very good to be in that function. Now, when you are there, what exactly are you really trying to do? So when you are here in this discussion, when we are focusing on what we are going to do in the future, what can we do today so that we have a secure future? Well, I think the main thing, it comes down to a couple of things, and I'll put it in some context. One is your stakeholders and your suppliers. That is one big part. And there's a big amount of dynamics around it. And the other is the collaboration and the communication that you have with these two groups around and how you go forward in the future. So now coming to this, so what does the sourcer do? We are kind of an interface between the internal stakeholder and the external supplier, or rather a business partner. So suppliers are a part of your business partnership. And what we are doing is we are being an interface, we are mapping our internal needs and demands and seeing if there are capabilities and capacities outside or in the supplier base. And it's easy to say that, that we are mapping our demand to the supplies, but actually it is not as easy, especially when we are now talking about just in case. So every situation is just in case in terms of so much of disruptions around. So that brings us into an area where we are talking about handling risks. So we have to identify our risks, or we have to identify what can be a risk with whatever available information, and we then go forward and say, fine, this is probably the way forward we will go ahead with. So just an example, if I give you, let's say I have a demand of a particular product within the company, and we visualize the demand in a particular way for the next 10 years. And I, as a strategic sourcing person, I have to go back and figure out how I secure how I make sure that I meet my demand. So I either go out to make a decision to make or buy. I make or buy, or I make and buy a part of it. So when I go to buy, I either go to one supplier, or I may choose to go to multiple suppliers. Interestingly, in many of the situations I see is when people are talking about multiple suppliers, they primarily have one primary supplier from whom they source, and the others are just qualified suppliers, and they're not really sourcing from them. So you technically have multiple suppliers to take care of your risks, but you're actually having one supplier. So these are the various, and so on, right? So you have multiple scenarios, multiple risk factors, and with all this dynamics, you decide what you're going to do. And it's not, it doesn't just stop there, because your demand, which you planned out for, like, say, 10 years, that is also getting iterated. So you come back and you revisit your demand, you revisit your strategy that you took, you revisit whatever decisions you took in terms of securing your supplies. So that brings us to certain key action points, like revisiting your, let us say, your long-term contracts. If you have a long-term contract, revisit it. If you do not have a long-term contract, consider doing it or not doing it. So there are a lot of risk factors which you need to come back to and revisit again and again. That becomes very, very vital. With this, there is another thing which is important, is the partnership with the suppliers. So we speak a lot about supplier relationship management, but in traditional lingo, it is about, traditionally supplier relationship management would mostly focus on figuring out how a supplier is good on the cost part, how they are good on the deliveries, how they are good on quality, and so on. But it is beyond that. If you really want to partner with your suppliers and go further, it is beyond that. So there has to be a paradigm shift in what we look for. We can look for areas where we can actually partner much more, like supplier-led innovations. There are a lot of scope in that, and that is very interesting and very important way in which we can partner with our internal design teams as well as with suppliers to come up with really innovative, cost-effective, value-adding solutions. There are several examples on that front in several companies. And something which is very important also is about decarbonization. So in one of our previous panel discussion this afternoon, I heard about decarbonization, and a speaker was talking about how, if you do not do, then your customers will tell you to get your carbon footprint mapped. I think there was this, we had a speaker talking about it, and that is so true. So we have to. So if a company is, for example, if I am a company and I am talking about net zero for myself, I simply cannot do this unless my supplier base, which is my scope 3, if they are also not following various sustainability practices. So I have to get into that also. So there is an immense possibility and need to partner with your suppliers for various sustainability initiatives. And this is not only a need, it's an imperative now. So this brings us to a lot of various ways in which we can further our supplier relationships as well as our relationship with internal stakeholders to go into the future. So we have to have a paradigm shift, actually. where our narrative should not be that anything that goes wrong is the fault of the supplier, and if there is a cost increase, it should be passed on to the customer. So there has to be a paradigm shift to this kind of an attitude, and I think there's a long way to go. Thank you.
Thank you, Seema. While we do all this, Ajay, what are the regulatory and compliance considerations that organizations need to address when strengthening their supply chain, infrastructure, and capacity?
So, good evening all. This has a two aspect. I'll cover both the things one by one. First thing is the infrastructure and the regulator part of it. As I come from precious metal and specialty chemical industry, where regulation is more complicated and more secured way it is required to follow. Why I'm saying this? Because you know that the chemical industry, after the pandemic, we have moved from China plus to now India plus, where we become now, rather than using self-sufficient, we are exporter in the market, right? As a specialty chemicals market, we are more of an exporter. So now, regulation part has come a long way where we need to adhere, we need to look into the way that, okay, it has been accepted by across the globe, and that has come with a large way to the business, that how we are going to address this regulation part of it. Very vital point is there are different regulations being there across globe. If I am serving an industry from India to say Europe and US, then the various different regulation has to work between those countries. So one thing is to managing our own regulation within the country, how we are addressing the raw material sourcing, like conflict material policy, what we have, then what, from which countries we are buying into it, and then supplying into to other countries. Say suppose, example like as this Russia-Ukraine war is going around. So there are sanctions from US to Russia, and if you have some technology from US in a form of IT or any technology I'm using it, my product, which is ultimately has to go to Russia, then it is totally banned. Then how I can use it, those things. So these are various things I expect has to be looked into as per the regulation part of it, which is not only in case of the raw material, but also in case of packaging material, how you are defining your packaging material to be there when you are supplied to across the globe. Because you have a certain rules and regulation when you talk about cargo which are hazardous in nature, especially the classification goes from class 7 to class 9, where it is corrosive in nature and different type of nature of commodity it has. And it has to be tackled accordingly. So the packaging become a very critical factor in our whole infrastructure to put into this. So this is one aspect of it. Secondly, now as we are speaking about this ESG part of it, so as all of us, we know that 50% of the whole ESG is on the supply chain. And around 6 to 7% itself comes from the logistics, because the way things has been going around. And one good part by default, it has happened that after the GST and when this border, state border boundary has been closed, now at least we have a default addressing some way to the logistics, but still the long way to go on that. And those, as an emission and the carbon footprint, we need to look into that, what type of infrastructure we are putting into it, whether from, so that you can at least able to sustain our business across. So there are various cost incentive plant we need to build up, like windmills and solars and other things to support the organization to have a carbon neutral, which is required to be there, because the push is coming from across the globe that by 2050 you need to at least go for a carbon net neutral zero. So how to go about it? So a lot of intensive capital employment has to be there in those structure, which are required to be infrastructure fully compliant, so that we are able to at least go and achieve those area in future.
Thank you. Now, Mr. Krishna, over to you. How do you think an organization can design the right warehousing network to manage the future growth with optimum logistics cost and high service levels? What are the available tools in the market and how this works? Please explain in layman's language.
Okay, quite interesting question, and hope and everyone is awake and not really bombarded with this kind of presentation. So let me underline one thing. I'm not IT professional or coming from the company who designed this network, but I will answer this question best of my ability, because I've been in consumer durable industry for the last 23 years, and I've a chance to use this kind of tools. Believe me, we are come from a similar industry, and we know very easy that where should be the warehouse. Every state we need to open one warehouse. But trust me, this data and technology, if you add with your experience, plays a major role. So, how this works, maybe I'll try to lay my language set. So it's a little difficult without visual presentation, but I'll try to make it easy. So one side you have your source, which is your, let's say, factory or your OEMs or your import goods coming in. Other side you have your customers, which are B2B customer or maybe D2C customers. Based on these two, and there are three levers in between. One, you have your logistic cost. Second, you have your service level to customer. And third, you have how many warehouses should have it. So you also asked what are the tools we have in which we can use it. So I had a chance to use 3 tools in my career. One is the recently we used called very advanced sophisticated tool called LlamaSoft. And the Siemens tool is also very popular one. But the in-house tool we have in Boss is called X-Cargo. So LlamaSoft we use in Turkey. Siemens we use in Australia, and in India we use X-Cargo. And believe me, when you have these 3 levers in hand, and when this tools plays, you have information that, oh, if you use your, increase your warehouse network, your service levels goes up, but your cost goes up. Other side, if you reduce your warehouse network, then your service level goes down, your cost also goes down. So then you have a lever in which you can choose and pick. And one can decide how many warehouse network I should have it, and where I should have it. And then you are taking conscious decision where and when, how big network we can open it. And these tools, believe me, work very well, because I come from industry where everyone just simply open a warehouse every location, and we never validate whether we have a right network or not. The company like us, we are growing every year on year, almost 32% is last 3 years average growth has been. And if you are not preparing your right network, it would be difficult to serve your customer. So these are the customer tools available in the market, and one should use it and see the magic.
Thank you, Krishna. It's really insightful thoughts coming up, and I have lots of questions written down, trust me, but we are running short of time, and I want to give audience and the people sitting here to a chance to ask questions to you. But before I go back to them, right, okay, and we are talking about future supply chain, right, okay, one of the things, and we are talking about building capacities, capabilities, etc. And while we do that, we invest in capabilities, capacities, IT, automation, etc. There's one thing which becomes very, very important, right, okay, which is the people angle to it, right, okay. How do we develop talent for the future, right, okay. I'll just give you one other statistics. India, diversity ratio in Indian supply chain is 6%, right, okay. And we in Ekart have made lots and lots of efforts. We have all women warehouses, all women service centers. We are still at around 20, slightly above 20% right now. But still a long way to go, right? While we do all this, right? While we build automation, while we build capacities, while we have all the tools, while we do sustainability measures, how do we ensure that we build the right talent for the future? How do we have a more inclusive workforce? Because the workforce here faces lots of attrition, I would say the productivity hampers, and I've seen that once you go with a more diverse workforce, it becomes more stable, the productivity norms start becoming better. So I feel this is one area we need to invest on as we go forward. Thank you so much, dear panelists. Again, it was really, really insightful. I just hand over to the people around in this room. If you have any questions, please go ahead and ask. Thank you so much.
Check.
If you don't have, I have lots of questions to ask, right? I can continue.
Any questions, ladies and gentlemen?
Negotiations of export and import freights. Okay. So even I am handling the same function, so I thought maybe let me cross-check, what's happening across, which will help others also. So the freight rates have come down drastically. Maybe they are in the pre-COVID levels to US and the UK. Okay. Last year we got into a fixed contract for US. Okay. So that we could, safeguard ourselves when the freights were up. And these guys were charging the, index price also, they were charging, surcharge also, they were doing it, shipping lines. So at that point of time, we got in a contract, so we safeguarded. Now, when the freights came down, they also, reduced the freights. In the contract, they respected that. Okay. Now, in this scenario, the freights are down. Should we go for a contract or should we go for spot bidding?
Yeah, good question. At least I think I should be the right person to answer. Jindal Stainless is the biggest container user in the country. We use around 1 lakh containers for our imports and exports. See, as it is in a declining market, you have not seen still the bottom. Always be on the spot in this present scenario, you are bound to gain. Be in the spot contracts, have a monthly contracts, and see the bottom. Still they are suffering. Even yesterday, the Hapag-Lloyd global CEO had given a press note saying that we are facing the heat. It had gone so low. Only one shipping line had come. Before coming here, I was meeting the MSC guys and all the shipping lines. Still they are saying that still it will go down. It had not touched the rock bottom. Always be on the spot for the next year or so.
Till the next year.
Maybe just I'd like to add in this question, because Boss is also biggest importer and exporter, and we have to have a annual contract. What we have done we have changed our strategy. What we are doing we are doing 70-30 formula. 70% we are going binding commitment with the forwarder so that we have secure supply. 30% we are going with the spot rate so that you can take the advantage of price if it's going down and up, so you can balance it out. So this would be my recommendation maybe.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Do we have any other questions, ladies and gentlemen?
In the continuation of that question, is it possible to have a index-based or maybe formula-based freight, something like that?
There is no any organized index which you say it's a foolproof index. Like for bulk, you have a BDA, bulk dry index. For container freight, China follows Shanghai container freight index. Europe has different indexes. So don't go with the indexes. Those itself are manipulated.
Only one thing I wanted to add here is we have to tap the market continuously as we were doing since during the COVID and post-COVID. Because the inventories are like, inventory of containers is like deteriorating, like exports from China is declining. So a lot of inventory is getting piled up there. So again, it should not be the case where the West Coast like piling up the containers and mountains and mountain. Same thing going to happen. So again, there is a market of capitalization from these shipping lines. So we have to be very watchful on that and be careful on this pricing. Pricing indexes is there, but we have to keep getting our information sources and work upon that.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions?
If you allow me, I'll just talk on one point. See, we are all in a sweet spot in India. As everyone sees, we are all there from the different industries. We, as a supply chain professionals, should be very mindful. We are all in a very sweet spot. India is really shining. China plus strategy is there. Everyone is seeing towards India, at least in the metals and mining sector, in the stainless steel, lot of demand we are seeing. Our volumes have doubled in last 2 years. And even on the infrastructure front, on the supply chain, guys, you please plan your supply chain infrastructure, plan yourself for the future. Right? For example, warehouse. Down the line, you will not get warehouses. You need to have your warehousing contracts. Keep your warehousing contracts intact. Have a long-term tie-up on the warehousing space. On, for example, evacuation, And coming to the manufacturing sector, trucks availability will be a big challenge. Rakes availability will be a big challenge. Indian Railways itself, Indian government itself is asking us to invest in our own rakes. We at Jindal Group, we are investing thousands of crores in building up our own assets, logistics assets. Either it is locos, rakes. We are building parallel railway systems in our organizations. We are investing a lot on the research and development, designing phases. We are getting future ready. Otherwise, you will be just wiped off. Your competition will take you over and you will be just lost in the wind. So, on your manpower, on your supply chain infrastructure, on the digital front, if you are not ready, you will miss the bus. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
One point to Mr. Ajay Singh. It may, I don't know whether this is in context of this seminar or not, but it's regarding the containers. As you mentioned that containers are piled up in China and all. So I think the container manufacturing industry is budding up, or maybe the just emerging in India. So what do you think about that in maybe down the line 5 years or something like that? Just industry perspective.
I think very good question. I think this has come up from the announcement from I think from Government of India during the just after this pandemic that from ages we were using these containers, and nobody in country in India we realized that we need to have this container manufacturing as an international standard to be in our country. But looking into this, Ministry of Commerce and I think Prime Minister have announced that we are going to have this containers being manufactured in India. I think that progression is going on. But we need right now, as Mr. Rao said, that we need to have this infrastructure readiness from all sort of things. The government itself cannot do all these things. So from the business community also we need to at least look into it, that how we can build up the infrastructure. So very right question. This infrastructure of containers availability is need of the hour, going to be there for future requirement. Because otherwise our strategy, you have product ready, everything ready, but no container, nothing. What will move it? What will import? What will export? So that is very good. It is required to be there in context of this.
Yeah. Can I take the question on this? We do work with a lot of container train operators. Indirectly, they do depend on a lot of container manufacturers. In India, hardly 6 to 7 container manufacturers are there. They are booked for next 2 to 3 years. Even if you want to order, they will not take the orders. That much huge demand is there because of the India growth story. If anyone wants to get into the container manufacturing industry, it's a right time. Even we can export, before we used to, import containers. Even now, if we want to take some 100 containers in India, I will not get it. I need to take it from China. Even these manufacturers are importing from China and doing some little bit of assembly and selling it in the Indian market. Good industry to be with. A lot of demand going to be there from domestic front also. Huge demand is there. If we want to place any order for any container train operators, they are saying that it will take 8 to 10 months for us to handle your business. That's the gap.
Actually, just I want to add one thing here. In JSW, we started export containerized rake from our Tarapur facility in 2013. It was the first time someone has started right from the plant to port, inside the port. There is no, this CFS or any clearance or anything is there. Just getting into the port and they would pick up it and put it in the vessel. So that it's a very efficient and seamless and even transparent system. So since last 10 years, we are using that and it's going very seamlessly. But the one problem we were facing then also and right now also, that is the container availability. That's the constant.
That is what I'm saying. Container availability is going to be a big challenge. That is also infrastructure, right? Supply chain infrastructure.
Yeah, lots of good startup idea as well, yeah.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions?
Thank you, everyone. It was wonderful speaking in front of you. I hope you had a great time. Have a great day ahead. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you to the moderator and other panelists for giving us such wonderful session. Requesting you all to please be on the stage for the felicitation. Now I would like to request Mr. Ronak Shah, the Executive Director at VTrans, CEO at VLogis, and the chairperson for today's conference to please be on the stage for the felicitation. Can we have a big round of applause, ladies and gentlemen? Bhushan. Now requesting to please felicitate Mr. Venkateswara. Thank you, and now requesting to please felicitate Mr. Ajay Singh.